All right. So thank you everybody for coming tonight for part 2 of this webinar. Jovan did a really good job the first time introducing diabetes, and now he's going to teach us how to apply it at our meals. So I will let Jovan have the floor, but if you have any questions, like he said, feel free to use the comment box or unmute yourself and let us know. All right, go ahead.
Thank you. So yeah, like Taylor said, the first one that we did was a little bit more just getting everyone up to speed with diabetes, what it is, part of like the physiology of why it happens and why our blood sugars will end up running high or running low. So for this presentation, we're just going to build off of that and then have a little bit of application with learning how to build meals that support healthy blood sugars. So I know Paul and Evelyn, you two got to meet me last time. Vicky, I'll introduce myself quick. My name's Jovan. I'm the current dietetic intern working with Enlightened Nutrition. I just got my undergraduate degree in dietetics from Minnesota State University, Mankato, and I'm currently doing my internship with their program. So it's exciting stuff for me. Alrighty. So overview of what we're going over today. We're going to talk about blood sugars, high blood sugars, low blood sugars. We're also going to touch on what an A1C level is. We're going to go over the 3 macronutrients and give examples of them. We'll go over like what a healthy plate template would look like, so you have a general structure for what that is. And then we'll look at that in application for like an example day of eating, and then we'll close out a year. So it shouldn't take too long. All right, so high and low blood sugars. So hyperglycemia is basically a high blood sugar, hyper meaning high, like hyperthermia is high temperature, glyce means sugar, and then emia means the blood, so high amount of sugar in your blood. So some symptoms of this that you might notice if you have it, sometimes your vision might get blurry, you might be easily irritable, you might have increased thirst, you might be having to go to the bathroom more. It really varies person to person. Some people experience all of them, some people experience none of them. And it also kind of depends on kind of where you've been at too. So let's say you've been having really steady numbers and then you bump up a good bit. Even if it's not very high, you might still feel that way because it's all relative to how you were before. So your body just sees a big change and then it reacts accordingly. Hypoglycemia, on the other hand, same kind of naming as hyperglycemia, but just like hypothermia means low temperature, hypoglycemia means low blood sugar. So some of the symptoms for this one, kind of shaky, you feel a little bit out of it, maybe your speech becomes a little bit slurred. If you guys have seen Harry Potter and you remember the Dementors where they kind of like suck the life out of someone, it kind of reminds me of that. So that's kind of what low blood sugar is like. Some people over time, they'll kind of lose their ability to sense low blood sugar. They won't be able to feel it anymore. So sometimes that's something that you got to watch out for. And if it is something that happens to you, hopefully your doctor can get you set up with a CGM or something to kind of increase your awareness of that. And it's also a good reason why testing is so important, because you could be low and you don't even know it. Alrighty. So some of the things that could affect your blood sugar and cause hypoglycemia, most obviously, is the food that we eat. All the sugar in our blood comes from the food that we're eating. You are what you eat, including your blood sugar. So that one's pretty obvious. Time of day, it's variable person to person, but one big effect is called dawn phenomenon. Not everyone experiences it, but basically what it is your liver starts breaking down something called glycogen, which is basically how our body stores glucose. And it's kind of priming us to get ready for the day. So what happens is it thinks you're going to wake up soon. It starts getting the energy ready so you have what you need for the day. But since your body doesn't actually process the glucose correctly, it ends up just sitting in your blood. So you can end up having high blood sugar from that. And then stress, this is something that can actually raise your blood sugar. So when I was in my undergraduate and I had a big test and maybe I didn't study the best and I was a little bit stressed for it, I would definitely notice that it would have an effect on my blood sugars if I was worrying. So what happens is your body releases cortisol, which is like the stress hormone, and it's kind of like the fight or flight response. It's priming your body to get ready for something that I might need the extra energy for. So that's why your blood sugar might rise if you're stressed. Exercise, This is also variable person to person, just like almost everything in diabetes is. But there's kind of like two classifications of exercise, so like cardio or like running, something sustained and longer term. Those tend to kind of make your blood sugar go down over time because you're continuously using up your glucose as a source of energy. If you're doing something anaerobic, something that's like a big bouts of effort, like weightlifting, for example, you might actually notice that your blood sugar will increase. And this is for the same reason that the stress causes you to increase. It's kind of like the fight or flight response. It's your body trying to prime it to make sure it has the energy that it needs. And then illness, this is also kind of related to stress. Your body knows that there's something wrong with it and it's kind of reacting accordingly. It starts kind of freaking out a little bit internally. It starts dumping off glucose in your blood, which can result in high blood sugar. I myself, I've noticed sometimes when I get sick, or even like a couple days before I get sick, I'll notice my blood sugars end up going higher for no apparent reason whatsoever. So it kind of gives you a forewarning a little bit that you might be getting sick soon, or it could be any other number of things as well. Other times, if I get sick, I have no problems. My blood sugars are more or less exactly what I'd expect them to be. Medication, variable from person or from medication to medication, but one big thing that will cause high blood sugars are steroids. So if you ever prescribe steroids for something, there's a good chance that they're gonna bump up your blood sugars a considerable amount. And your doctor should be pretty conscious of this when they're actually giving you or prescribing them. And then finally, alcohol. Maybe you won't notice it after just one drink, maybe two, but after you've had some, what ends up happening is your body recognizes that alcohol is like a toxic substance. So your liver is going to prioritize that alcohol that you've consumed and breaking that down first instead of any carbs that you might have in your stomach or GI. So what happens is your blood sugar might drop for a moment because your liver is not breaking down any of the carbs that you've eaten. And then once all the alcohol has been processed, all the carbs start hitting you at once. So what will happen is you'll start bumping up pretty quick there from that. So like I said, it might not be apparent from like just one or maybe two drinks, but as you go, it'll become more obvious. Hopefully you're not drinking that much anyways, but it's good to know. All right, so moving on to application a little bit, we're gonna talk about the three macronutrients, or like the three food groups kind of. Number one, carbohydrates. And what we really want to focus here is on fiber. You're only going to find fiber in carbohydrates, really. It's technically a type of carb. So things like bread, rice, pasta, starchy vegetables, and obviously sugar. These are all examples of that. So what we do really want to focus on here is fiber. So some like processed grains, like for bread, like white bread versus whole grain bread. White bread has had like kind of like the fibrous portion of it kind of removed. That's why it's white. Whole grain bread, on the other hand, has all those pieces still intact, kind of giving that brown look to it. Same thing kind of goes with rice too. White rice has had the same thing done to it, and brown rice still has the fibrous portion intact. So that's why those foods are higher in fiber. And same thing for pasta as well, of course. And then one big thing, obviously, is starchy vegetables and non-starchy vegetables. Non-starchy vegetables, these are things like broccoli, carrots, cauliflower, things of that nature. Those are very high in fiber, so if you can stick with those in your diet and incorporate a lot of them, then you're going to do yourself a lot of favors there. And then finally, obviously, sugar, of course, it's a carb. And so moving on, protein. These are things that help you build muscle, and also all of your hormones in your body are made from protein. They're broken down to something called amino acids, and then those on their own will be kind of like rebuilt, kind of like individual letters in a word. Your body takes certain ones, puts them together, and it creates a whole new thing. It's really cool. So some examples here are your meat, eggs, dairy, beans, and tofu. Things like beans kind of tie into a couple things. They're a great source of protein, and they're also a great source of fiber. So you'll find that a lot of foods are kind of a combination of multiple things. Some things are just one carb, protein, or fat, but most of them, I'd say, are a combination. And finally, fat. These things help you regulate your hormones. They kind of act like a signaler, sort of. They help make sure everything's in check, and also they'll aid with vitamin absorption, specifically vitamins A, D, E, and K. You don't really worry about that too much, though. Things, they work out on their own. Your body's smart. So things like your cooking oils, like olive oil, avocado oil, dairy products, like you've noticed before, it's also in the protein section. Actually, no, I did. Oh yeah, it is right there in the protein section. It's another example of something that works in a couple different categories. Fatty meats, avocados, and nuts. And there's a couple different kinds. There's saturated and unsaturated fats. Primarily, you'd want to stick with unsaturated fats, so use your healthy fats, of course. And then saturated fats, not saying you can't have them, but they shouldn't be the primary fat in your diet. So putting this together a little bit. So we have a kind of a standardized template here. We've got basically an example plate here, and this is kind of how you want your plate to look like a little bit when you eat. Not exactly, it is just a template. And sometimes, foods like an omelet, for example, that's on the next page. It's gonna have, or I'll just go back. So basically, you want about half of your foods to be non-starchy vegetables. So like we talked about before, these are like broccoli, zucchini, carrots, cauliflower, asparagus, green beans, things like that. They don't really have a ton of carbs, but they do have a lot of fiber. So these will give you a lot of bang for your buck. Also, they're full of micronutrients, so they give your body the little bits that it needs to be healthy. About a third of your plate is your starchy carb, or if you've been taught carb servings or portions, these are 1 to 3 of those carb choices. So like, for example, 1 slice of bread is 1 carb choice. So about 15 grams per each, or an upper amount of 45 grams. Healthy fats, another third. And this could be something like avocado or nuts, or most likely, this is going to be your cooking oil that you use to cook your protein here, or your non-starchy vegetables. And then finally, your lean protein, 20 to 30 grams, or I like the example of like a deck of cards, or if you have a little bit smaller hands than me, about the size of your palm of your hand. And that'll give you about 20 to 30 grams. One moment. So these are a few examples. These are actually just some meals that I had that worked pretty well for this, so I use them as an example. So this is kind of a popular breakfast that I like to have. I do a bunch of vegetables, I saute them up, and I put in a couple eggs with it. So this is kind of an example of how this plate doesn't need to be exactly how your plate looks, but the proportions. So you have a bunch of vegetables, and then with the eggs, it makes an omelet. It's delicious. It's a great way to start your morning. And then also peanut butter gives you some fat on a piece of toast. You got some peanut butter toast. Omelet and peanut butter toast, pretty good in the morning. For lunch, for example, you could have a big bowl of just, spinach, greens, whatever you want to put in your salad, topped with croutons, some dressing, which is usually some sort of fat, whether it's like ranch dressing or olive oil, whatever your choice is. And then topped off with chicken or tuna. That's going to give you, the protein that you need in your meal. And then finally for dinner, something like zucchini, asparagus, anything of that. Nice big serving of those. A side of sweet potato, some olive oil that you use to cook the veggies, and then your protein in, which could be pork, chicken, fish, whatever your flavor of the week is or day. Alrighty, so wrapping up, if you guys haven't scheduled your one-on-one with me yet, you should do so. I think both of you actually, yeah, both of you are good to go in that boat. So we're all taken care of there. If you guys have any questions, now would be the time to field them.
There's nothing in the chat box yet, but if you guys have anything, feel free to use the messenger, or you can unmute yourself. Either way. All right. Well, thank you so much, Jovan. That was another great summary of diabetes and nutrition. And I'm sure I can speak for everyone here. We're very grateful. You did a good job.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you, guys.